So we're all in agreement that Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken is gonna be like the best anime of 2020, right? Right? Of course I'm right. Just look at it. Just listen to that OP. So good. Magnifique. One small glimpse at these young otaku ladies, and best girl Kanamori, was all I needed to get me on board with Eizouken. And it's a Masaki Yuasa anime? I'm not just aboard the hype train, guys. I'm the fucking conductor. Beep beep. Masaki Yuasa is truly a standout director, and I'm gonna tell you why. Above all else, Eizouken is meant to be both a beautiful and bizarre love letter to animation itself. Whether it's through scenes of Asakusa and Mizusaki gushing over their favorite anime, or through incredibly imaginative sequences of the ladies bringing their 2D world to life, Yuasa and his team want to send the message that anime is a medium to be celebrated. If Eizouken isn't enough proof that Yuasa has a heartfelt appreciation for animation, then maybe taking a look back at his body of work will help with that. Personally, I think Yuasa's style outshines the rest because of how unique it is. Many would describe Yuasa's style as unorthodox because, let's be honest, the way he animates is about as far from traditional as you can get. Also, the overall mood of each new project feels deeply distinct from the last. Can you believe that the guy responsible for Devilman Crybaby is also responsible for Ping Pong the animation? I can't believe it. Actually, I can, because ping pong is the devil's sport. I think Glass Reflection put it really nicely in his video about Yuasa. Watching his work could best be compared to looking into somebody's dream. All of the little images appear to make little to no sense when taken out of context, but when you are living in that very moment, everything actually makes perfect sense to you. It may appear chaotic and disjointed, but at the same time, it still feels real and human. Is it strange that the staff room at Eizouken is in a massive swimming pool? Hell yeah. Does it work perfectly in context with the rest of the anime? Also hell yeah. Yuasa has been in the animation game for about 3 decades now, but surprisingly, his directorial debut, Mind Game, didn't come out until 2004. That really isn't too long ago when you think about it. Before directing, Yuasa worked as a key animator for a shoujo series called Chibi Maruko-chan at the Tokyo animation studio Ajiado. He scored this job almost immediately after graduating from university. Although he earned a lot of praise for his early work, Yuasa felt like nothing he made in the studio was good enough because of all the tight time constraints put on him. Because there's nothing like deadlines and good old imposter syndrome to make you second guess everything you put out to the world, right? I need a minute. Anyway, it didn't take long for Yuasa to transition over to freelancing, where he got to try all of the different moving parts of the animation process, like drawing backgrounds and storyboarding. Yuasa once stated in a film discussion that those he collaborated with while freelancing helped him figure out what worked for him, and made him regain his enthusiasm towards his career choice. At one point, Yuasa worked with Crayon Shin-chan's director, Mitsuru Hongo. By doing storyboards for Crayon Shin-chan, Yuasa discovered he really liked storyboarding, and went on to create several of his own little projects for both work and for fun. This newfound passion drove him to create his cult classic debut film, Mind Game. Where do I begin with Mind Game? So, Mind Game. It's about this guy, and he's got feelings for this girl from his childhood. And it seems like a pretty standard anime rom-com plotline, like, at first. But then, this dude, like, fails to protect the girl from a couple of Yakuza, and then he ends up going on, like, this big psychedelic journey right after the Yakuza shoots him right in the asshole? I mean, I don't blame you guys if you're not with me here. I wouldn't exactly call Mind Game an anthology film because it's all one story. However, it tends to feel like one at times because of all the varying animation styles used to tell the story. Most critics and reviewers like to compare it to one of Yuasa's, and my favorite films, Yellow Submarine. That's another one that doesn't make too much sense story-wise, probably because of all the drugs the Beatles were on in 1968. Still, we can gather that it's an adventure film with trippy visuals where the characters learn lessons about love and the joys of life after meeting a series of wacky characters. Also, side note, if Yellow Submarine ever gets remade and it's not directed by Yuasa, then I'm picketing. You know, if it weren't for drugs, the Beatles wouldn't exist. Right you are, John. Oh, thanks, Paul. Anyway, back to Mind Game. It was Yuasa's first film, so it didn't do super well box office-wise. Also, the small budget and offbeat visuals seemed to put a lot of people off from seeing it. But that doesn't mean that the film was a total flop. In fact, Mind Game actually beat out Studio Ghibli's Howl's Moving Castle during award season, winning animation prizes at both the Mainichi Film Awards and Japan Media Arts Festival. It also gained a lot of attention here in the States. When the Japan Times asked about the film's cult popularity, Yuasa stated, "I think that Japanese animation fans today don't necessarily demand something that's so polished. You can throw different styles at them and they can still usually enjoy it. In the past, if you had different styles, you would have pulled away from the story." You know, I gotta agree with him. Now that animation is a more established and somewhat respected medium than it was back in its early days, people are craving something different and new. I can't speak for all hardcore animation fans, but I know that I would rather spend my time watching something that's unlike anything I've ever seen before over something that looks polished but doesn't really bring anything new to the table. After Mind Game, Yuasa didn't release another film for over 10 years. But within that time frame, he was in charge of several short-form projects, mainly directing and writing TV anime. In 2006, he debuted his first series with Studio Madhouse, Kemonozume.
What the heck? I've never heard this.
Kemonozume. I don't think a lot of people watched Kemonozume. It was like a Romeo and Juliet story, but with cannibals.
What?
It's like a Romeo and Juliet story, but like with cannibals. Yeah. His next series was 2008's Kaiba, another Madhouse-produced series. No, it's not an anime about that emo-looking dude from Yu-Gi-Oh! I know at least some of you are thinking that, because you're nerds. It takes place in a futuristic world where after death, all of your memories are stored in this little chip. But surprise! The uber-rich are using them for evil! All the while, a guy named Kaiba loses his memories, wakes up in a strange room, and has to go on a big adventure to get them back. Despite the Tezuka-inspired and more childish-looking appearance of this anime, Kaiba also deals with several more mature themes such as loss, heartache, and just a dash of existentialism. It does fall under the more abstract side, so you probably won't want to watch it when you just want to let your brain melt. Don't let that scare you away altogether though. Kaiba is still a really beautiful anime that Yuasa and his team put a lot of hard work into. Then there was 2010's The Tatami Galaxy. It's difficult to describe this anime without getting too into it, but let's just say it involves parallel universes, romance, college clubs, and a slew of wonderfully weird characters. Tatami Galaxy was what truly made me realize how ingenious Yuasa's style of movement is. Since he goes for a more limitless approach, everything is exaggerated, but at the same time, so accurate to the feeling he's trying to convey. When I say limitless, I mean sort of like whenever a character drinks alcohol and their body expands like a balloon as the drink travels down from their mouth to their stomach. Also, whenever a character feels anxious or agitated, their outline and facial expressions turn all angular and stiff. Of course, this doesn't actually happen to real-life flesh and bone human beings, but it's still how we feel when we go through these common experiences. What I'm trying to drive home here is that by breaking the rules and taking this more limitless, wavy gravy approach, Yuasa has made his characters feel more human. We're seeing how they feel on the inside as well as how they look on the outside. Kinda like how in Miyazaki movies a character's hair like raises up whenever they feel some type of way. Also, can I just say that as somebody who is adult age, it is so refreshing to see a director make so many anime starring adults. Maybe that's just me. I know a lot of high schoolers watch this channel. But I'm an old lady now, and I don't know what's hip with the kids anymore. The final anime of the early 2010s that Yuasa graced the world with was Ping Pong the Animation. Never in my life did I think an anime about table tennis would actually be interesting, but like, here we are. Like most sports anime, it's less about the sport itself and more about the characters who play the sport. This is a Yuasa project we're talking about though, so of course it's going to be like exponentially different from all other sports anime. The show follows two young boys, Smile and Peko, and their relationships with the sport of ping pong. There's so much depth and heart as they come face to face with several challenges that could like greatly affect their futures. Although the art and animation verge on the more crude side than some of Yuasa's other work, they are still just as bouncy and high energy as the rest. Also, I think it's really cool how each table tennis match contains its own story, and every time the ball hits the paddle, you can feel the emotional weight of the player. So at this point, Yuasa has 4 TV anime, as well as a few collaborations, like a trippy episode of Adventure Time, and animation sequences in Samurai Champloo, and Space Dandy. So I gotta say, that's a damn good portfolio. Making TV anime was actually quite a transformative experience for Yuasa too. In its own way, it helped him better understand how to make a film. In a Japan Times interview, Yuasa stated, "I learned more about storytelling and the production process while I was making those. But the thing that interested me the most was how people were actually watching. 2D animation isn't like a novel or a manga. I tried to imagine how people watch things and what kind of expectations they had. When I started to get a handle on that, I felt ready to make another film." And the film he ended up making was one that I just adore. Night is Short, Walk On Girl. I actually had no idea that this movie was sort of a side story to Tatami Galaxy since I saw the movie first. Please don't roast me for that. You don't really need to know anything about the former to understand the film, but it does help to give a little more context. Like Tatami Galaxy, Night is Short is more of a character-driven story than a plot-driven one, so it's kinda hard to describe properly. I will say though that if you enjoy heartwarming stories with magical realism, guerrilla theater, and women that can drink their weight in alcohol, then you'll probably enjoy this one. I think I said this in a previous video, but Night is Short is like watching a painting come to life. In every movement, frame, and color, just so hypnotic. Kind of like... Oh, but Yuasa didn't just stop at one film in the latter end of the decade. Nah, he made 2. Yuasa also directed the more family-friendly Lu Over the Wall the following year. It's about a lonely student who befriends a lovely mermaid, even though the other people in his town have a grave fear of merfolk. This movie is a really fun one for music lovers, with a fun dance sequence and a really killer soundtrack. A lot of people like to compare Lu to Ponyo, which I guess makes sense when you compare their character designs, but trust me, plot-wise, they are very different films. Oh yeah, and how the hell can I forget about 2018's Devilman Crybaby? Taking the Netflix anime world by storm, this is easily Yuasa's most graphic series. I know most grimdark anime usually wait until episode 3 to reveal their true colors, but Yuasa was like, nah, and wasted no time to show his audience that Devilman Crybaby is not an anime for crybabies. This anime actually introduced a new legion of fans to Yuasa's work, since Go Nagai's Devilman franchise was already like insanely popular. Before Devilman Crybaby, Yuasa was hesitant to show things like blood and violence in his projects, since he wanted more people to like enjoy watching his work without the worry of puking. Grotesque violence and sex scenes can certainly be alienating, but when you're adapting a series where the main appeal comes from those unsavory pleasures, you may as well go out and make the sex and violence look like as beautiful as possible. And now we have Eizouken. Although we are still pretty early on in this series, Yuasa has proved himself once again to be a true visionary. Okay, so if I can gush for just a moment, most of my favorite scenes are when the girls are conceptualizing their ideas and they insert themselves into their own drawings. Not only are they like beautiful creative sequences to witness, but I find that in their own way, they're reflections of Yuasa's own experiences as an animator. The way they managed to incorporate all of the moving parts of the animation process reminds me of Yuasa's early days as a freelance animator, figuring out what his strengths were so he could regain the passion for his craft that he had before working as a salaried employee. When the girls have their aha moment and birth the idea of the gas mask girl fighting the tank, it's like watching Yuasa and his collaborators in a way. You see all these individual creatives encourage each other's ideas and put them together to create something that's just so much more than the sum of its parts. It's beautiful, and as strange as it sounds, it gives me hope for my own budding career as a young creative. I can't recommend Masaki Yuasa's work enough to you all. His films and TV anime are so refreshing to watch. From their limitless dreamlike animation to their uncannily realistic narratives about the human experience. Let me know in the comments who you want us to cover next. I'm Dory. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Dory's Director Highlights. Oh yeah, and thanks for watching Getting the Robot, your anime watch list. Until next time, stand best girl Kanamori. I'm out.
was great.
We did it. Thank you.